Y'all know yesterday was Veterans Day, and I know we have several veterans in our congregation. Corey and I were invited by Anna to be part of a panel of veterans where her class got to ask us questions about our time in service. Now, let me just be upfront and say my military service was not long, nor was it illustrious. So for once, y'all will be amazed to hear this, for once, I didn't have a lot to say. Now, don't laugh too hard. Come on now. I wasn't deployed. I didn't have an exciting job. I didn't move very far up in rank. There's nothing wrong with any of it, any of my time in service. I'm proud that I served, but there was nothing exceptional or special about it. Now, on this panel, there were some pretty illustrious people. They talked about several things they had done. We all talked about being in the service, what we learned from it. It's clear that we had many things in common, even though none of us had served together. Things like how important teamwork is in achieving a common goal, how to work with people from all different backgrounds, from every place imaginable, how to put differences aside when it really mattered, how to be responsible and dependable. And although this one wasn't mentioned, you will appreciate this. I bet if it had been mentioned, everyone on this panel would have laughed and nodded their head if one of us had said, we learned really well how to hurry up and wait. Hurry up and wait. If one phrase could describe military service across all branches, all ranks, all jobs, it would be hurry up and wait. You're always, especially the lower you are on that totem pole, you are always being told by somebody to do something. It always needs to be done right now in what seems like the most ridiculous way possible. And when it's done, you sit there waiting on whoever told you to do it in the first place. And half the time, whoever told you to do it in the first place comes by, and then the plans have changed, and you got to do it all over again, and then you got to wait all over again. Hurry up and wait. It might be the unofficial motto of the United States military. From Matthew 25. Then the kingdom of heaven will be like this. 10 bridesmaids took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. When the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. As the bridegroom was delayed, all of them became drowsy and slept. But at midnight, there was a shout, "Look, here is the bridegroom, come out to meet him." And then all those bridesmaids got up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish said to the wise, "Give us some of our oil, for our lamps are going out." But the wise replied, "No, there will not be enough for you and us. You had better go to the dealers and buy some for yourselves." And while they went out to buy it, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went with him into the wedding banquet, and that door was shut. Later on, the other bridesmaids came also, saying, "Lord, Lord, open to us." But he replied, "Truly, I tell you, I do not know you. Keep awake. Therefore, you know neither the day nor the hour." Weddings are great, aren't they? You spend a fortune having a great party that always goes according to plan. Absolutely, perfectly, and everyone behaves exactly how they're supposed to. Okay, maybe not exactly according to plan. Weddings today might look a little bit different than the one in our text today. Ancient weddings would last days, sometimes even a week or even more, and involve not just family and friends, but the entire community where they were. The bride and the bridesmaids would wait at the bride's parents' house until the groom and his crew would come and get them. The guys would wind their way through town, and the women wouldn't have any idea when the men were going to start on their way or when they would even show up, how long it would take. So there was always this element of not knowing what to expect. anything could happen to make things start late. Just like now, families got a little anxious. Things didn't go as smoothly as planned. The groom and the groomsmen could decide that they were all hungry and leave the church and go to McDonald's and order 40 burgers and be stuffing their faces when everyone's supposed to be walking down the aisle, and nobody tells the bride why things are running behind because she might freak out that the groom and groomsmen aren't there. Or something like that. Whatever unexpected thing can happen, it usually happens at a wedding. 2,000 years ago or today, we have that much in common still. And this parable seems to be the very definition of hurry up and wait, which is also a big part of weddings, whether they're ancient weddings or today. Now, parables are fascinating little tidbits, aren't they? We can and do learn from them, but we also have to be really careful when retelling them in our time and place, in our culture, not to stretch the symbolism so far out of place that it becomes unrecognizable and useless. So I'm just going to go ahead and be honest and say I struggle with this parable. Like what's stuck in my head from previous things that I have heard and learned, because it just doesn't sound like the gospel that Jesus normally taught, and I think that that's more than a little problematic. So if you've heard this parable before, and I'm sure many of you have, you might have heard something along the lines of how it's about the end times, right? The fancy preacher word for that is eschatology, which is a really dumb name, but anyway, we'll just call it the end times. How we have to be ready every second of every day because Jesus can return at any moment and will. And some people will be ready and Jesus will just sweep them up and take them to the biggest party they've ever had, that they've ever imagined. And others will just not be ready and will just be left out in the dark, alone and without hope. And if you want to be part of the group that goes to that party, man, you better be ready. Prepare like crazy. Prepare for every unexpected thing to happen imaginable. Prepare for the impossible day and night because you just never know what or when this will happen. Just stand on that street corner with your sandwich board and your Left Behind series in one hand and your bell in the other, and just keep ringing it saying the end is nigh. That sounds terrifying and absolutely exhausting. And a bunch of baloney. Now look, I'm not going to go up against thousands of years of teaching and be a complete heretic and say that Jesus won't come back in some way or at some time. Notice how I said complete heretic, just halfway there, not all the way. Yeah, I have no idea what that's going to look like or when it will happen. I have no idea. I don't know if that's a symbolic thing. I don't know if that's a real thing. I have no idea. And anyone who claims to know the answer to that, you know what they're doing? They're making it up. Now, they might have really good intentions. They might sincerely believe whatever they're making up, but they're making it up because nobody knows that. But and if we say this parable is about Jesus's return and who gets into heaven, we've got some issues, friends. First of all, who's Jesus in this story when we talk about it in those lines? The groom, right? Does anybody else have a problem with that? A little bit, yeah? Like Jesus, if he's the groom, he doesn't look very good in this story. Since when is Jesus in the business of pushing people away instead of welcoming them in? The same guy who said things like, love your neighbor as yourself, who welcomed little children into his presence when everybody else was trying to push them away. The same Jesus who tells people who are trying to murder a woman for adultery that, yeah, you can throw that stone if you've never sinned. That's the same guy who's playing bouncer at the door saying, well, you almost made it, but you have horrifically bad timing and y'all got to stand on this side of that velvet rope. And then there are the bridesmaids. There's 10 of them, and none of them look amazing. All 10 of them, 1 through 10, are bad bridesmaids. 5 of them come off as completely dingy. But were they really? I mean, these ladies, they knew their culture. They knew what weddings were. They brought oil. Typically, a groom could come as late as midnight, so they brought enough oil with them for a reasonably long wait, for what usually happened. This is how they did weddings. They knew that they couldn't guess when he would come and when he wouldn't, but they didn't bring enough for the unexpected. They didn't plan for the unplanned. They didn't know what to do when things didn't go according to what they thought they should. And so no one would help them, by the way. So they struck off on their own, hoping for the best. And those other 5, the wise ones, they were selfish. I mean, yeah, I said it, they were selfish. Sure, they prepared for the unexpected, but doesn't it seem like they were just a little bit smug about it too? Like, oh, you didn't bring enough. That's too bad because I brought mine. See, it's right here. It's practically overflowing with oil. Oh, you want some? No. You better go out at midnight and buy some. Doesn't that seem strange? In a community and culture where nearly everything is shared all the time. And here's something, though, about all 10 of them. You're kind of on one side or the other. They all fell asleep. They all fell asleep. So much for helping the bride keep watch, who also fell asleep, evidently. It's a little hard to keep watch when your eyes are closed and you're not paying attention. If you're getting married or helping somebody to get ready to be married, even if you don't know exactly when things are going to kick off and all the preparations have been made and they're finished and the only thing left to do is wait for it to happen, are you likely to lay down and just take a nap? Come on, weddings and marriages in general in many ways look a lot different now than they did then. It's not just about 2 people and their dreams and desires, but an entire community's well-being. But even with that, we can safely imagine there would be some kind of jitters. Yeah, some kind of excitement, anxiousness, anticipation, all that coursing through your brain and your body, and you're going to look around and go, well, I think I'll go to sleep now. That is totally weird. That is completely out of place. So what we are seeing is that everybody's unprepared. No one was keeping watch for what was needed in that moment in time. So what if it's not about how things end? Or cramming Jesus into a character that doesn't quite fit right, or who gets in and who gets out, but how we're supposed to be waiting in the first place. Who likes to wait? Y'all can imagine I'm about the most patient person waiting. I know I am in good company. There's this great comedian, John Panette, and he used to do this great bit about waiting in line and how much he hates waiting in line and how it basically just turned him into some other creature altogether. And he goes through this whole thing in his head about these people in front of him at the grocery store, and it always ends with him screaming to them in his own brain, "Get out of line! Get out of line!" Grocery store, retail store, entertainment event, driving down the road, minding your own business. It does not matter. Being in line just sucks. Waiting in general stinks. Most of us, if not all of us, are not very good at it. We want to skip the waiting and get right to the good part, the purpose of whatever we're doing, the reason we're there in line in the first place, and that makes sense because we're impatient and we want things done orderly and in a quick manner, and we don't want other people to get in our way from whatever it is that we're doing, except we spend our entire lives waiting for something. We could say our entire lives are just one long line of going from one thing to another. Y'all, I am looking at your faces, and before you say, "Oh my God, Tabitha, that is the most depressing way I have ever heard life explained," hear this. There are a lot of good things that we wait for. If we're kids, what can't we wait for? Birthdays. Have you ever talked to a kid whose birthday is in 10 months? They got that puppy all planned out, right? They got their Christmas list finished in July with edits and annotations. They are ready. They are ready for their driver's license. They are ready to graduate high school. When we're young adults, what can't we wait for? Graduating college, oh my goodness, moving out of mom and dad's house so they can't tell us what to do anymore. We can't wait till we pick a career, fall in love. Some of us can't wait to get married. Some of us hope that never happens. How about middle adults? We have careers, we're waiting for promotions, we take care of our families, we might be expecting a baby, we wait 9 long months for a baby to be born, and then what? We can't wait to sleep through the night again. We work an entire career dedicating a large part of our resources and our time and our abilities. And what can't we wait for? For that sucker to be over so we can finally retire and do all the things we didn't have time for, like travel and leisure and just watching other people go to work. We spend our whole lives waiting for what's next. So how do we spend it in a way where it's not wasted time? Perhaps that's the question that Jesus is asking. What are we doing while we're waiting? Who are we becoming while we wait? Our waiting need not be passive. Our waiting can be active, preparing for what we think, we hope, we believe is next. And our faith is part of that active wait as well. How we wait in our faith is as important as how we wait in everything else. So what happens to our faith when we're waiting and things don't go according to plan? That ever happen to you? Things not go according to plan? You don't like it. Makes you uncomfortable at the very least. This entire parable, though, it is designed to make us uncomfortable. While Jesus was in the habit of loving people, Jesus wasn't in the habit of making people comfortable. So we have to ask questions about how and why we do the things we do. Perhaps one reason this parable brings us such discomfort is because we look at these characters, and while we're judging them more than a little bit, we recognize ourselves in them. We know sometimes we're wise, on occasion. Sometimes we're foolish. Sometimes we're selfless. Sometimes we're thoughtless. Sometimes we're unprepared. And sometimes we're so over-prepared that we obsess about every detail and we can't think about anything else. Perhaps sometimes these things show up in our fears, in our insecurities. how we worry when it's dark, and how we'd fix it all if we'd only have the power and control to make it all right again. And in this parable, wouldn't it be really, really nice if the bridegroom was just a little more hospitable and generous, inviting everyone into the story with him? But sometimes we're not all that inviting or hospitable either. Now, it could be said that this parable is about vigilance in uncertainty and being unprepared, and about how to endure when things go wrong, and keeping our trust in God in all times of darkness, and waiting faithfully about acting on our hope for the future and our hope of God's justice and righteousness and peace. And all of those things are true, or could be. But also, could this parable be our own self-reflection of our own self-awareness and how we wait and who we are becoming as we wait? Amen. I invite you all to pray with me this morning. Wise God, we often seek counsel from so many sources while ignoring your guidance. Help us to navigate the tough choices we must wait, and to understand the circumstances of our world and our lives through your perspective. Your way of life embodies care, God, and compassion and concern for all of creation. May we follow your model for the flourishing of our human siblings and of our home, the earth. There are many ways, God, we as your creation can hurt one another, sometimes intentionally and other times carelessly. We ask for your forgiveness, but also your help in doing better. There's so much pain and suffering in the world this morning, fear and grief and war, hunger, sickness, desperation. Be with all who are suffering in ways that provide comfort and care that's needed. Oh God, bring peace to Palestine and Israel and other places where war is mistaken as an answer for justice and innocent people suffer. No matter what is happening, God, you give us hope and grace to begin anew. You empower us to choose the path of life everlasting and are nudged by you when our journey strays. Help us know that every movement toward you is received with gladness in the full and welcoming embrace of the Holy Spirit. Amen.